Joining us today is Vik Sahay. Okay,
Here we go. No. This is all part of the intro.
No. Okay. Joining us today is Vik Sahay.
Sahay? Yes. I mean, the stumble was hilarious, but it is Sahay, so you had it right.
I did, and then I started questioning myself.
Sahay. Yeah.
Joining us today is Vik Sahay, born in Ottawa.
It's pronounced, but the first name is Vik.
No, it's not.
No. Go ahead.
Joining us today is Vik Sahay.
There we go. There it is.
Born in Ottawa, Vik is a film, TV, and stage actor whose career has spanned two decades across Canada, the U.S., and the globe. His latest film credit is The Infiltrators, which won Innovator and Audience awards at the 2019 Sundance Film Festival. Prior to that, Vik's film work has brought him thrice over to the Toronto International Film Festival with roles in Canadian films like My Awkward Sexual Adventure by Sean Garrity, Mike Clattenburg's Afghan Look, and Richie Mata's Amal. Most recently, Vik starred in AMC's Lodge 49, which was executive produced by Paul Giamatti. In Canada, he's also starred in the CBC series Our Hero and Wonderland, and has a pretty lengthy IMDb credit list, which is a testament to his work ethic and likely sense of humor too. Weird
work ethic.
Very carefully, you might even see him in Good Will Hunting.
Oh my God.
But to many of his fans, he's perhaps best known as Lester, the morally challenged frenemy to the title character of NBC spy comedy Chuck. On the show, he also happens to be the lead singer of the fictional band Jeffster. Highly acclaimed, of course, and
very highly acclaimed.
Yeah, especially amongst Lester's one friend and possibly maybe his parents.
Yeah, he himself acclaims it.
Right, which is really the way to go, I think.
You just have to start by being your own fan.
That's such wise statement.
Yeah, immediately wise.
Well, thank you for joining me.
Are
you ready for this battle of this interview?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's see what you got finally.
Okay, well, let's see. I'm going to start with a very easy question.
Okay.
So if you were to describe yourself as an animal, animal would it be and why? I think I know the answer, but I'll let you.
Let me hear your guess.
No, I'm not. I know the answer. I don't know why.
Well, I think that I have been described and describe myself. I guess I would say some level of wolf. I think more though, because there can be a very loneness to me and pack oriented when people are when you get into my inner circle, I think I'm very ferociously, perhaps over ferociously protective. But generally, I can also end up on my own, wandering and howling at the moon,
Not the worst thing.
No, it's not. The moon is to be howled at.
That's right. Well, earlier, before we did this interview, I said that I'm more like a fox.
Yes.
And I sent him a picture of a cute fox that I took a picture of. And I mean,
it was very, very cute. It melted me. Yeah. It broke my spell of power.
Right, and I won that.
Yeah, that was 1-0 for you.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah.
So you've been acting for a while.
Bit.
So wondering, when did you start, what age, and how did you get bitten by the acting vampire? I'm not saying bug. Vampire.
No, it's a vampire because it sucks you dry. It bleeds. It bleeds you.
Yep.
That is a difficult question to answer, Kat, because I have no idea how it all started. I really don't. I did not grow up in an art environment at all. My family is space engineers and judges and doctors and whatnot. And I don't even think I went with them ever to see a play or anything like that. So all I knew very early on was that there was something, I just felt something different. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know what acting was. And so I was just following, you know, a compulsion, an impulse, and it led to like a drama class, and then I went to an arts high school, then theater school, and then into the industry. But I never, before I really even made decisions about it, that's sort of how it came to me. It came very internally. I feel sort of born with it, but I don't know where it came from. And so my relationship to acting is really not, it's not an acting bug. It's not performance oriented. It's very, or acting vampire, excuse me. It's very internal. It's very private. It's very personal, I think. It means a lot to me. I think it saved something in me that I don't quite know what. All I knew was math, science, chemistry, algebra. And I was taking those courses for a long, long time before I started to be drawn over to more and more sort of art courses and art oriented without really even knowing why I was. I don't even remember saying to myself, oh, I want to be an actor, or this is what I want to do for a living. It really, truly just sort of, I kind of like descended into a river that kind of took me to the dismay of my family and fear of my family and concern and confusion and
you were the black.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in a way that it was, I didn't even know I was. I didn't even know that I was doing that. I mean, you know, when I think about it, my mom is a dancer and a painter, but those are never the forefront of kind of our existence. They were just things that I knew she did. I took a lot of dance classes from her when I was growing up, but I don't know if I even thought of her that way. But when I think about my approach to the work now, there is a very private kind of painter element to it and a very kind of embodied physical dancer element to it too, that, you know, when I say sometimes I feel like I'm not from my family, I then think of my mom. In fact, I have a painting of hers hung up on my wall that makes me just feel this kind of connection that is very, very, I don't know, enlightening to me, emotional, means something. But yeah, you know, to answer your first simple question, that's that. It's difficult. It's not an easy answer. So that's we've begun the tug of war.
Right. I like that. So, you know, going through your IMDb, I see smaller roles, but in pretty iconic films, like I mentioned, Good Will Hunting, but you also did Existence. So what was it like to book even a small role in such a classic film like Existence and getting to work with, you know, the David Cronenberg?
Yeah. I mean, you know, from day one, my aspirations, and there's still this, were to find work that mattered to me. And so I don't know if I felt the traditional early joy of getting those so-called small roles. I don't know if that meant anything to me. I don't even, quite honestly, I was so young and new at it. I don't know if I knew really who David Cronenberg was in that kind of grand, iconic sense. But, you know, it was 3 weeks and I spent a lot of time with Christopher Eccleston and went dancing with Jennifer Jason Leigh and played tennis on the lawn with Willem Dafoe and hung out with, you know, the Sarah Paulis and Don, you know, but for me, I was always like, I want to be with these people, but I don't necessarily want to be with these people in this capacity. Even then, I wish I had more to do. I was hungry, like a wolf, if you will. And so even then I was kind of itching and wanting to find something that meant something to me. I was somebody who very early on started to say, you know, people would say, oh, you get to, if you get this, you get to work with so-and-so. And I would say, I am dying to work with so-and-so, but not in this capacity. I don't need to be around so-and-so just to be in this world. Even when I was very, very green in the industry, I wanted to tackle roles. I would rather take let's say a very independent film in which I got to really bite into it, and get paid nothing, than do something like Existence. Not that there was anything wrong with it, and it was an amazing film, but you understand my vantage point on it was, come on, I want to be Jude Law, I want to be whomever, I want to be Jennifer Jason Leigh, I want to be one of those two people who are carrying this picture.
Well, that's a fabulous drive that I think a lot of times people lack, and they lack for all sorts of reasons, or people's motivations are different. Like for you, it sounds like that motivation was to really explore these roles, and you mentioned it's kind of a very intimate experience for you. So in that sense, when you are approaching a role, like what makes it, obviously what makes it interesting to you isn't necessarily who's in it or who wrote it or whatever, but is it like the subject matter, or is it about being able to explore a certain area of your psyche, or is it about being able to put in a character that's really different from you, or a character that you just haven't, what's kind of what really leads you into that role?
Before we go too far, I do want to say something about gratitude. And I have struggled a lot, and we can talk about that, but I've also been very, very lucky. And so I am not at all pushing my philosophy on what people may or may not lack, or what they should be taking or not taking. It's a very brutal industry. And I have been very lucky, and I'm aware of that, and I am grateful for all the little things that I've gotten and whatnot. To answer your question, all of everything you mentioned, I do want to work. It does matter who I work with, of course. I want to work with great artists and people I admire and whatnot. But I think for me, the answer to that would be immersion, an ability to immerse, something that takes all of me, that bleeds me. I have a tendency to live in character and do kind of, I've gotten a little bit of a reputation among some circles of doing fairly extreme things to feel roles. You can ask me about that if you want. To really kind of get into to get to the bone, to get to the bone of the sort of people that I'm playing, and to create worlds and to immerse myself. But it would be that kind of thing, if sometimes I don't get to do that. Sometimes I have to take a role. So I want to be discerning as much as possible. I remain discerning. I have, I'm unearnedly discerning. But of course, when you're that discerning, you also better land the stuff that you do want. Otherwise, you're going to be in a desert. And I've spent a lot of time in that desert. So sometimes you take other roles and you bring what you can to it, and it might overburden the part, or it might over embroider the part, or maybe the production is like, okay, easy. This is not about you. But I still like to bring everything I can to it. So I think that's what I'm always sort of searching for, something that allows me to immerse. And sometimes that is a very, 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 very small role, like the Infiltrators, which was the film that you said I had just done, that went to Sundance. It's, I'm a little bit of chocolate in a big stew, but I did, I really, really put everything I could tortured myself a little bit, quite frankly, to play that role, because it was important.
Right. Well, they do say there is no small roles, only small actors. That's
right.
True.
Right. That is.
Yeah. And I mean, I do have to ask, what are some of those extreme, you knew I was going to ask you that.
Yes.
Set it up. So what are some of these extreme things that you've done?
Well, okay. So this may require editing because it's long, but okay, so for the Infiltrators, which is basically the story of the immigration detention centers in the US, I was playing this character who just kind of figures in the background of this prison and helps out and whatnot. And he was this Sri Lankan refugee. And so I began my research on what that was, what was going on in Sri Lanka, that there were people who were fleeing, and it was all horrible. It was horrifying and scary and terrible. And so I started to reach out to ACLU lawyers, and the director helped me a little bit. And I found one, and I sort of spent a lot of time kind of talking to him, digging into what he was doing. And he eventually said to me, a few hours north of where you are, there is a Sri Lankan refugee who spent 5 years in a immigration detention center in the US, and I represented him. And if you want, and he said, you know, he has got some, you know, emotional issues from his time, I can try to set up a meeting for you. And I said, please do. And so he, I think, reluctantly agreed. And so I started to drive out there and spend time with him. And he started to tell me his story. And it was just brutal. It was the torture that he suffered in Sri Lanka, and then the journey to get to here, and then finally walking across the border only to be thrown in jail for 5 years, and the stuff that happened to him in jail. And one of the things he kept repeating was, it was very odd. He kept repeating how he lost weight. He kept losing weight. He kept losing weight. And I was like, okay, right. That's tough. That's hard. Because I was like very muscular, but I kept losing weight. And I was like, okay, right. But so and I kept trying to, and on my last day there, a few weeks or a week before I started shooting, I was driving home, and it was so overwhelming. It was so much that I just felt numb. And I was like, what do I do? What do I do to crack myself into this world, crack into this world? And so I decided to stop eating. And so for about a month, a little over a month, I didn't eat. And I didn't tell anybody. It obviously got out on set, and of course it caused great concern, and people were like, what the? But it opened me up, and it put me in a certain mindset, and it was very hard and odd and surreal, and sometimes I felt great. But yeah, that kind of thing. Or, you know, for Amal, I shot in India for a few months. I didn't sleep. I chose to kind of just stay awake the whole time, because it was, I mean, you know, your body just will shut down right on you. So I think I fainted, I'm sure, in the evening sometimes, but it was a couple of months, you know, a few months. Yeah, it was hard. It was harsh and odd, but my character was an addict, and I didn't, you know, he was a gambling addict, and I'd done enough research on that. I wanted to feel what it was like for him to always be out, always be out, always be out, always be out, and have that kind of start to affect his psyche. So that kind of insanity.
That is insane, but I also get it.
Yeah. I mean, look, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I fasted for 52 hours, and that's about all I can handle. Although
but it's amazing, right? You do feel good after a while, right?
You do. It's interesting because you stop at it's actually the first 48 hours that are the toughest, because
they're brutal.
And it's mental. Like, a lot of it is mental, because you
exactly
don't eat the food, you just kind of think you do, and you can't have it. So for me, it was like almost like a mental challenge. And then when I hit, that was the goal, was 2 days. But it's interesting, because by the time I reached about that 48-hour mark, I didn't actually feel hunger anymore.
Yeah.
It feel quite different. But I promised myself that I would only do it for 2 days. So
And why were you doing it?
Well, there's a lot of benefits now with intermittent fasting. So when you say a month, like, normally I'd be like, that's crazy and you can't do it, but I actually realized that you actually can, and there are some benefits to it. So
yeah. The way I eat anyway, I do sort of intermittent fast. And so it was insane. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Day 3 or day 4 of the first week, I was like, oh man. And I had to drive to set and back. And it was even getting into my car started to become concerning to me. And then, but by, the second week, I felt great. The third week, just horrifying. Fourth week, a little bit better, all that stuff, up and down, up and down, up and down. But again, there was a feeling for me of like, if this guy went to see this movie, I don't know if it would be better I didn't want him to go, oh my God, well, there's obviously a guy going to craft services between takes. I started to feel responsibility. And and I do a little bit fictional or non-fictional, not that I was actually playing him, but I was using him. I just felt a responsibility. It's a very important story. But Amal was obviously fictional, and I did the same thing because I start to create these people as human beings that I'm stepping into, taking them on. And so, yeah.
I'm curious how you discovered, first of all, your knack for comedy. And second, when done right, I think comedy is still drama for an actor because it's real. But not everyone is able to be funny. And sometimes people, you can take the same text and two different people are going to do it, and one will get laughs and the other one won't. So how do you approach a comedic text, whether it's a film, TV show, or play?
I don't know if I go around thinking I have a knack for comedy, but I don't want to be glib and say the approach is the same. It is, of course. I think that I think I can hear a music, a rhythm, a feel. There's a kind of reversal. There's a sense of something in a good comedic script that kind of allows that kind of switch and this and that, the beat. I don't know. I heard somebody say about me that because I took all that Indian dance, that's where my kind of sense of some kind of a rhythm in comedy comes from. But I don't know. I really don't know. But when it's well written, which is, to be honest, few and far between, it's there. It's written there. You can feel how funny this can be, and you can kind of just rely on the notes that are already written into the script to kind of guide you. And I think that sometimes the last thing you want to do is over embroider it or mug it. You just kind of want to let it sit in your kind of pace and find that the beats and the pauses and the turns and the kind of sound of certain things and the reaction and the feel and the kind of, the more you've kind of invested in the character and the more truthful you are, the more it'll ring as hilarious, but also because I obviously look so ridiculous, according to you.
It wasn't a look thing. It was a personality thing.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Well, we'll see. So yeah, that would be my answer to that. Yeah. But yeah. Go ahead.
Fine.
You go.
Fine. Well, no, I just think, I've come to realize that a lot of comedy is your point of view. So, for me, I do tend to see the funnier things in life, even though I'm a kind of a tragic character in many ways.
I think of you as a tragic character, a tragic heroine, if you will.
A tragic heroine. And
yeah.
But I see the humor in situations, and that what allows me to sort of go on, because otherwise I'd be like,
right.
So I think that's something that maybe is shared amongst people who are funny, is that that's just naturally their point of view, and when they bring themselves to that role, that's how it comes out.
It's possible. It's very possible. I don't not today feel the horror of the things that are going on in the world and in North America and in this country. It is sometimes very, very hard to kind of laugh. I do see sometimes I'm infuriated when I see people kind of laughing about it. I myself, you've caught me on a very strange day because I'm in a little spell of insomnia. It's just a bizarre time. It's such a bizarre time. I find myself waking up in the middle of the night. I don't know if I'm
today.
Did you really?
Yeah, I woke up, but I couldn't sleep. I woke up, was doing, I don't know, whatever, and then tried to come up with stories to make me fall back asleep. But
is that what you do? Tell yourself stories?
Yeah, and then I bore myself.
All right. You bore yourself back to sleep. Weird.
Yeah, that was a tip from my dad.
Bore yourself back to sleep. Yeah. Was a tip from your dad.
Yeah.
he knew you, I guess.
I see.
Oh, that's so hurtful. That's so hurtful. Yeah, no, it's just such a, I mean, I don't like, I wake up and I don't know if I'm actively going, oh my God, the politics of today, or this social situation, or California's on fire, or, you know, whatever. But I do find myself awake and I'm like, I'm like, Vik, what is it? I kind of try to source it. Are you anxious? You nervous? What is it? What is it? What is it? And I today I assume it was because I was nervous about this interview.
Yeah, because I make people nervous. You know?
Yeah, you're very scary, sweet fox, I guess.
I've been told that.
Right.
So, you know, can you give me a little bit? I'm really curious to get into sort of your head. Well, a little.
Oh God. Yeah, don't dwell there.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to know, you know, let's get into the land of your rehearsal process. What happens? Like, do you know, Anthony Hopkins, you know, he reads his script apparently, you know, 100 times, which I tried to do and realized how freaking impossible that is. But, you know, what do you do when you first get the piece, and how do you kind of sit with it? And of course, you don't always have all that time, but, you know, what's kind of your
Yeah, the desire is to have that Anthony Hopkins time to be able to read the script 100 times. Yeah, I mean, it's some of the stuff that I've already talked about. I mean, I in terms of the text, I write it out, very kind of write it out for myself. I, you know, just normal actor rules. I'll be pulling thoughts, the sort of the thinking process. What I really like to do when I'm shooting is to free fall a little bit. So as soon as I can, I like to not know what the other characters are saying or doing. And so that when the camera's on me, I almost like to just kind of jump off a cliff and see what's going to happen. So rehearsal on film is not always the best thing. It can be very good, but being on camera and having that kind of slight element of chaos can be delicious. It's super scary, and you can fall, but when the camera sees even an actor kind of faltering, it can be engaging. So I always kind of want to be in that place of like not knowing, you know, I've planted the triggers. I've understood the world of the guy. I've understood the person. I've connected it to myself. I've pipelined it to my own emotional system. And then I have just let it go. And I create a sort of soundtrack. I always have my headphones on when I'm on set. And then, you know, they call and then, okay, ready to action. And then I just like to be there. And so whatever will kind of get me there.
Well, how do you find, I mean, it can be very difficult to do when you're, you know, doing like, you know, 10, 20 takes sometimes, or sometimes more. How do you make each one feel to you off kilter and like it is that first one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you get into the later takes, you know, you're going, well, I kind of know now what's going to happen, but you're always just trying to begin again. And I think that is one of the actor tools you always want to have. You kind of need all the time anyway, which is just to basically almost, you need nothing more than your short-term memory and nothing less than your short-term memory. You know, you need to be able to, yeah, you need to go back. You need to be able to forget everything and just start again, but you also need your short-term memory to get this script into your head. So yeah, I mean, you're just beginning to start again, or sometimes what you'll do, you know, as the takes go on, is you just start to focus on different tasks. You know, so on this one, the task is to, you know, I don't know what it would be, a different intention, let's say, or a different tactic, or the task will literally be a task. I want to try and make sure I put this thing together during the scene. Or the take will be, you know, whatever might get from here to there in a different manner, or get from here to there faster, or have this mean a different thing, or replant a trigger. Or sometimes for me, it's just listening to a different song right before they call action. Yeah. I mean, the questions you're asking are the questions that I myself ask. How am I going to, what can be new? And sometimes you shouldn't even be thinking about that stuff at all. You should just go again, just go again, just go again. Sometimes the rote, sometimes the repetition, sometimes the redoing, sometimes the boredom, sometimes the again will be the take that the editor, the director will go that moment.
Each moment is always, even if it's in a subtle way, it's always completely different because nobody's
I mean, you are always playing off somebody, a human being who will inevitably be breathing a little bit differently each time.
I just realized what that whole Meisner exercise, the repetition one, where you go foot, you're repeating the same word.
Yeah, you repeat. It's about being present. It's about being present and being and listening, and you're listening for that kind of alteration and responding to the present moment and all that stuff.
So how are my listening skills 1 out of 10?
Pretty poor. Pretty poor.
I'll work on it. I'll get the later.
Work on it, and then let's just do this exact same interview again, and then again, and then again, and again.
It'll be like the first time every time.
Yeah, every time.
Masterful.
Yeah.
So how do you find yourself within the role? A lot of times actors struggle to kind of take a role and not play this like character, but put themselves somehow, bring the things that make them special into a role that's a different person.
Yeah. You are constantly invading your own defenses, really. You're constantly trying to rile yourself up. You're trying to one of the grand things about being an actor is that you are a studier of humanity, psychologically, spiritually, behavior, and consequently coinciding with that, you're a studier of yourself. You're simply asking, just the way that empathy develops in an actor is you simply have to ask the question, what would I do? Or what is he going through? In my case, what is he going through in this moment? What is this character? What is this guy going through? What would be like? Oh, I remember when. Oh, my dad and I had this moment. Oh, I this, and you're sort of starting to bring this pipeline between your own sort of emotional nervous system and this character that's kind of going to start to go back and forth. You're going to basically share that kind of the nerve system. And to do that, you spend a lifetime invading your own defenses. Because as human beings, we're going to put up walls. It's a funny thing, because I was talking to somebody about this who was asking me about a similar question, and she was working on something, and she goes, I have this emotional scene to it. How do you get there? And I said, you got to plant these, what I call these triggers, and you got to relate, you got to find it there. And then she asked the question, but then I'll know they're there. And I'll kind of like go, here comes the big moment. And I go, yeah, absolutely. That is a very different, but you are kind of rawing yourself up to that task of invading your own defensive. You're trying to let down your guard, breathe, and kind of allow in whatever you're trying to allow in.
And trusting yourself too, like if you've done sort of the background work, because I think I had this fear. I was working on a scene that was very emotional, and I was able to tap into it every time.
Right.
But then I've decided to change. I was getting kind of bored with the scene, so I've decided, how do you take a really depressing scene and bring some comedy to it, or like So I started doing that, but I was worried that I wouldn't be able to hit that. And it's interesting that when I let go of that and just focused on what I was trying to do in that moment, it just, in the moments that it needed to calm the well of tears and so on, it just happened, and it happened in a way that felt even more connected. But often actors don't trust that it's going to be there, so they hype themselves up.
It's because you sometimes see it. You see it in the script. You see cries. You know, obviously there are, I wouldn't call them workarounds, but you know, when humans are crying, they're often trying not to. So there are a lot of things that you can kind of be there present fully emotionally without literally water coming out of your eyes. I too, it seems like you too have kind of an open instrument, as it were. I, in a scene, will cry very easily. But some people don't. And I always, if that is the case, either, yeah, you want to see if you can open yourself up and then trusting yourself exactly as you're saying, but also, you know, bring the fact that you're not an emotional person to this moment, truthfully, fully, deeply, see what happens.
It never feels right if that's not how I'm going to react. Like, it just never quite sits with me. But also the whole trust thing, you know, it was a valuable lesson. I used to study in New York with Robert X. Modica, who's passed away, but we had these late nights at Carnegie Hall and we would do cold readings, and I was amazing. Yeah. But we would, I remember this one evening when I was reading this play, and it was a cold read, so I didn't know it was coming. And you would take a line and you would say it and give it to the other person. And at some point, it was quite light, you know, the play felt really light. And we were having this dialogue, and then suddenly I felt like I wanted to break into tears. And then I went into my head and I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. You're being silly. This is not the right, you know. And so I suppressed that impulse. And then when I went and I read, because we never read stage directions, right? When we were doing it, but when I went back and read it, that exact moment was the moment it said she cries.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, the writing was so good that it just naturally led me there.
Came to you.
I didn't trust it. And so, you know, I robbed myself sort of that moment.
Interesting. So for you, obviously emotional moments are not a daunting, scary thing.
No, but it opened up, like, I think, and even more during COVID, because I realized that I was able to get there often you see the performance, and now I'm like, oh, I can do it every single time we rehearse it, every time we do it. So that was a bit of a discovery, because I didn't expect that to be happening.
Interesting.
I struggle more with like light emotions, like laughing or things like that. If it doesn't naturally make me laugh, I just can't. I'm not somebody
get there.
Yeah, like if you're like taking a picture and they're like, can you smile for the camera? Like, that's the word. Like, I hate that. I can't do it.
But in a scene, can you not, just as one would do for an emotional moment, substitute?
Yeah, I
for
find
something that
takes me out, so I have to kind of feel it in that moment. So it's more more imagination based, I think.
Yeah,
the substitution helps me understand it in rehearsal, but in the moment it's more about my own imagination. But I can laugh. Like, I'm doing a scene from Proof, and it's all flirty, and so you are, there is definitely moments there where like he makes me laugh. But if you just said, but if it wasn't happening organically, I just couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's a harder emotion for me to muster than tears or
right.
Anger is also a little bit tricky because I'm not naturally a very angry person. I'm more simmering, passive aggressive boy.
right. You kind of take bites out of people. Right.
Yeah. Right. I was going to say, I don't take bites. I claw.
You slowly claw, and then they're like, oh my God, I'm that bleeding to death.
That's right. Right. With the paper cut.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, what's going on? I'm bleeding to death slowly but surely.
Right. So getting back to you.
Oh, right, me. I forgot.
Yeah, you. I'm more interested in you. I already know everything I got to know about me.
Oh.
Though I love to talk about myself,
Yes, well, I mean, I feel like I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Chuck has obviously, that show, ran for 5 seasons, obviously it has had a big impact on you. I'd love to hear about the impact it has had, but also, you were playing the same character for 5 seasons. So how did you keep it interesting and fresh and fun for yourself?
Well, yeah, tackling that question first. One of the great bizarro things that happened at the beginning of the second season was, unlike what you said about me, what they said about me was that I have this weird kind of more rock and roll vibe. And and so they created for my character and one other character this sort of fictional garage band called Jeffster. And so there began, for the rest of the time, an apprenticeship that I had at the hands of one of the main music composers of the show, where every few episodes or so, whatever it was, I had to learn a new song. And so I spent half my time on that show in this person's music studio. And I, unlike you, don't have any singing like knowledge. Like, and certainly before I began, I didn't know anything. I mean, I've taken singing classes, you know, as part of a drama course and all that, but never like how to, I mean, I remember just taking songs and they were always picking like these kind of 90s, 80s rock songs. And they would get them at the very, very last minute because you'd have to get all this approval and things would fall out and all this stuff. And just go like not even knowing where to breathe. Like I was like, where does I remember the only song I got to pick was the song that I sang live at Comic-Con called Fat Bottom Girls by Queen. And I was like, oh, this is a fun song. This is perfect for Comic-Con. I choose this. And they were like, okay, yeah, we got approval. Go ahead and do it. And then I was like, where on earth does Freddie Mercury breathe? And he, of course, is an opera-trained, brilliant singer. And so I was like, oh my God. So you can see sometimes in that performance where I'm like I turn around from the audience where I'm like, oh my Lord. But it would happen every time. And then to watch the musicians kind of put together each song, or sometimes when I was trying to change the key. So I would get a song and I was like, I can't just do it as that singer sang it. I need it higher. I would have a musician kind of just lay down a track for me as to where he thought the key was. And I would listen to him do it. And I would go, oh, I can see where he's kind of bringing this emotionality or this flavor to it. He would just kind of do it. He would just do it on the spot automatically. And I would like absorb it. And so for me, it was one of the most incredible things that could happen for me on a show that went that long, you know, often 20 plus episodes a season, 5 seasons, is that I was just in this exhilarating, terrifying, constantly changing, more and more elaborate singing journey that was incredibly humbling and illuminating and wild, just wild to do, wild to then just get to exercise that on stage rock star thing.
Wolf.
That wolf, that wild wolf.
That wild wolf. Exactly.
Brought the wolf out. Yeah. So that was one of the real fortunate things about the show. I mean, you know, the writing was fun and it was flavorful and it was delicious and it was changing and they were deft with the comedy. So it probably would have been great anyway, but this extra thing that happened to happen as the second season began was extraordinary.
Was there much of a transition for you when you went from working in Canadian film television to the US? And when did you know you were ready to move to Hollywood?
No, I mean, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the size of things is just massive. I mean, I'd never been on a set the size of where we shot the pilot for Chuck and then the sound stages of the Warner Brothers. I was like, oh, wow. You know, I mean, that just doesn't really, in Toronto, at least when I was there, it didn't really exist. I mean, you know, I worked at the CBC and on those series and whatever was shooting in town film wise. But it was just size, and and that can be daunting, and it can be the number of people that are behind the camera, the networks and the studios and the producers and the execs and the writers, and then you're just kind of used to a couple of producers and then dealing with the director or the writer. But then there's like 5 writers. There's the director's kind of the least scary person you're dealing with. There's a lot of notes being whispered back and forth between takes. But I just with that show in particular, I just jumped off the cliff, in this case comedically. I just started improvising, winging it, adding things, going for it. It was scary at first. I remember the first time I did it, where I just started to go into a huge kind of improv. They were like, cut, and there was this giant pause, and everybody was like, it was kind of the first time, and then they were like, do more of that again, more of that. And I was like, okay. And I started to get going. But yeah, so once that happened, I started to feel like, okay, yeah, I can bring what I know onto this set. So it was just that. It was more the size of things. Obviously, I didn't know anybody at all really here. So I was by myself when I got Chuck and moved here suddenly to do the show. So not only was the cast new, the environment new, but I would drive back to where I was staying and I didn't know anybody else. So I would kind of be by myself. So it was all new, it was all scary, it was all daunting. And there are things that were going on. In Toronto, you were always driven to set. You were always picked up by people. Here, it was drive yourself. And so I was like, trying to find my way and onto a giant lot, park here, walk there. It's studio this. It's just all very scary.
I wouldn't make a day. I would
it's
never
daunting, right?
Lot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You get lost in the parking lot. You get lost on the way, and then you arrive, and then here's your trailer, and there's hair and makeup, and it's just noise and this and that, and they're like, and then action, and you're just like, So size of things was new, environment was new. And so, it was about kind of just customizing things so that I understood it. This is just a scene. This is a scene between me and this, bringing things to a palatable size where I could kind of just concentrate. I know what a camera is. I know what's going on. I know this scene. I trust myself. Let's just jump. Let's go. Let's go to war. Let's go to battle. Let's collide. And once I could kind of get a handle on that, I could kind of just block everything out and go for it.
So you have kind of I'm going to call it a diverse background.
Yes.
Yeah. What was it like, booking jobs then versus now? Have you found that there's been any changes? I mean, obviously you're probably even more popular now because you've just had a longer career, but.
Yeah, I mean, I want to, again, I sometimes hear actors talk in interviews, and I want to make it really clear that, that desert I alluded to earlier, it's tough. It's a very, very tough industry. I've been very lucky, but I have spent a lot of time fighting, failing, missing heartbreak land where I haven't gotten roles at the last minute. Chuck itself was a story of heartbreak, quite frankly. I don't know if we have time to talk about it, but I've spent a lot of time howling at the moon. So, in terms of me being more popular now, Chuck was obviously a major line in the sand in terms of how I was known and being seen and into the US market, but it's always tough. It's still been tough. Every next level is equally difficult. In terms of diversity, there is more discussion now. There's an awareness now. You can certainly point to certain examples and go, great, there, yes, like that. But I don't, you know, I've always felt this thing. I felt this thing when I was then, and the question is, has it changed now? And how much? And the thing is that if let's say I'm reading for a series and they're casting a group of people. And one of those characters maybe is diverse, as you're calling it. Let's say he's even described as South Asian. I don't know if I'm going to get an audition for that role because too many of the powers that be are white. And for whatever reason, the way I look, as you've often attacked today, I am not seen as what people consider South Asian sometimes. And so I will then, though, maybe get an audition for a different role. But I know that they are going to cast that South Asian role with a South Asian actor. And what I've always felt is, or what I've always, felt is that they're not going to cast two of us. Mm. That if they're going to cast that role South Asian, then I'm not going to get the character of David, Steve, Mike, John, whatever I am reading for, almost no matter what. And the question I have is, has that really changed? Has it changed? Has it changed? Has it changed? Will that happen? Do I have to fight to only read for that one South Asian role? See if I can get in, see if I can convince them, guys, I am South Asian, regardless of whatever bone structure or energy or whatever. I often feel like when they're casting these people of color, they want them to be eunuchs. And I've been told I don't have a eunuch energy. So it's difficult. It's not a meritocracy. And for me, it actually has taken a long time, maybe longer than it should have, to fully digest that it's not a meritocracy. I've always been somebody who's like, I want to be Ryan Gosling in Half Nelson. I want to be Sean Penn in Dead Man Walking. I want to be Daniel Day-Lewis in The Name of the Father. I can't wait to be. So as long as I'm that good, as long as I can get myself that good, I will be. And it was a very invisible brick wall that I have had to run into and still probably don't think properly. I still go, I can be Cate Blanchett. I can be, whomever we're talking about. I can be. It's difficult. I'm a real sorry, go ahead.
No, I just feel like it's important to continue feeling that way, because the other way around isn't necessarily going to be that productive.
So. Well, but there's a way for me not to spend my life in a perpetual state of heartbreak, right? Of going, I'm not good at, how come I got to be Daniel Day-Lewis. I've got to be Daniel Day-Lewis in my left foot. Understanding, as there are new Oscar rules, as there are this and that, and feeling weird about it, feeling like, can't we just compete? Can't we just compete? And people go, no, because it's not an even playing field.
Yeah, I think such a tricky thing, because I get the problem, but also I think I don't want to create a situation where people look at you or someone else and go, well, that person got that role just because of diversity, not based on their talent, because certainly a lot of people have the talent to do it. But I think it starts from the casting process and ensuring, of
course, it does.
People are seen that are not.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I also have a part of me that feels like the needle really only moves through excellence. And so if you're excellent, you're excellent. But so many white people, let's say, get cast not being excellent, get cast because they're, I don't know, a name, right? We don't have that same concern for people of non-color, as it were, right? We go only to people of color. Well, let's be concerned that you're not being seen just because you're being cast this way. We don't say that. There's still, even with that altruistic sentiment that you just said, it still is two different rules, right?
Yeah.
And
I think part of it is also, like, for example, if I am not Black, which I am not, I'm probably not likely to write a character who is Black, represents a Black experience, because I feel like I lack the knowledge and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. Whereas somebody like Shonda Rhimes has been very successful writing these shows that everybody watches, that happen to have characters that are Black, they're lead, amazing actresses, that everybody watches because they're just really great. And the more of that content we see, or like Crazy Rich Asians, John Chu, he, you know, had an opportunity to just make a lot of money, have it go to Netflix, but he really fought for that opportunity to have it seen in theaters because of what it said. And then having that movie be such a success, and clearly not just amongst people who are Asian, I mean, that opens the doors for other creators, and then people see themselves reflected and hopefully create more content that reflects their backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are anecdotal evidences of things changing, right? There are, and those are great examples. You're absolutely right, and we need those to not be the exception to the rule anymore. And yeah, and so yeah, we need content creators, as you're saying, to be allowed in, but they need, right now, the system, even those systems are being run by, it's not like Shonda Rhimes has allowed, I think that most of her shows began on ABC. I think it's ABC. Suddenly, like, now ABC went, what are we doing? We should be, everybody should be a person of color. Right now, they've gone, great, we have this, and the rest of our shows will be whatever our shows, right? And similar to Crazy Rich Asians, they were like, great, we made so much money. Anyway, back to what we usually do. So yeah, it's about trying to break through, and it's hard for me. You know, I'm a great follower and participator in combat sports and one-on-one sports. I boxed seriously for a very long time. I play tennis. I'm an avid follower of MMA, and I think it's because it's
boxing match later, right?
Well, yes, later we'll have a boxing match, but I think it's because it's pure, right? It's a meritocracy. It's like you and I one-on-one versus each other. And our industry is simply not yet. And so I long for that. I long for to just be judged on the merits, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I've got a rapid fire round for you.
Oh God, oh geez, these are the worst. All right. And I'm obviously not very good at rapid fire.
Well,
I just blather on.
We'll try. So you've worked at a number of Canadian projects, and I'm going to name 3 films, and I'd love for you to just share whatever comes into your mind about working on each film. So
okay,
rapid fire. First film is Afghan Luke.
Mike Clattenburg, Nick Stahl, Stephen Lobo, out in a desert, became very, very, very close friends with them. Nick and I were very close friends for a long time. It was a real honor to work with someone like that who I have admired for a long time.
Okay, next movie is My Awkward Sexual Adventure.
Very, very close friend of mine, Jonas Chernick, wrote it, handed me the role very kindly and very sweetly. And to be on a set with him we were just, the sole objective was to get through a take without breaking. Yeah, and I felt like Sean Garrity directed and put that film together with such unexpected grace that it was it was beautiful.
And now last film title is Amal.
Yeah, Amal, you know, I told you a little bit about working on that earlier. I went to India for one of my first times as an adult to shoot that. And so along with all that was going on with the character, I didn't know what my relationship to my own kind of culture and cultural heritage would be. And it was incredibly deep it was like a weird, deep cultural bell of recognition rung in me that I did not expect. I was told that by my parents that my actual first language was Hindi and not English. And, I didn't really grow up speaking it. I didn't know if I knew anything about it, but very, very soon after I was there, it all just came back to me immediately. And I could just converse with anybody in Hindi. So yeah, that being there was extraordinary.
You did such a great job in this rapid fire round.
Oh, wow. It's over? Thank God.
No, so I've got one more question for you.
Damn it.
And it's you were not prepared for this, but
oh God.
So it's just a fun one. Don't worry.
Okay. I'm very worried.
And then later I'll tell you all about my boxing matches.
Okay.
So can you share one interesting truth about you and also one lie? And I'm going to try and guess which is which.
Okay.
If I can.
See if you can pick it up.
Yeah, if I'm a good lie detector.
Let's see. God, I don't even know. I'm trying to come up with either an interesting truth and an interesting lie. Okay. I have spent some time with my brother on a COVID floor. He's working in, both my brothers are doctors. He's working in a COVID ER. And so I got to, but I kind of spent some time there, and it was, it was tough. I engage in really deep process sprint training.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna guess now.
All right.
I think the sprint training is the lie, and the COVID thing, oddly enough, is true. Am I
incorrect?
No. I was.
How did I do selling the lie?
Really good. The acting was terrific.
And how did I do faking the truth?
So you added emotional detail to it. That was the big one for me. You added sprinkles of truth to it also, and quite specific. And then the lie, you made it seem like, or actually the truth, you made it seem like you were trying to come up with something. Very good. This was
Thank you very much.
Class of lying, so I know never to.
Thank you. Never trust me. Well, never trust me.
No, and on that note of
on deception,
which is what we do best. Let's face it.
It's what we do best.
Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thank you so much, Kat. That was actually really great. I really appreciate it.
I am so glad.